Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for tuning in to another conversation on race in America. This is United Shades of Gray. I'm excited. We have a great show that is planned out for you guys. Today, I have a great friend who's going to be in the studio. He's in the studio with us right now. As I told you, we were doing that four-part series on systemic racism, how we can begin to eradicate systems of racism in our nation's structures and systems, and how it's going to take cutting-edge leadership and leaders who are committed to seeing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we have one of those individuals today. He is a CEO of Hemlock Semiconductor, Mark Bassett. Why don't you say hello, Mark, to our audience?
Hello, audience. It's a pleasure to be here, Kareem. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to have him. We're going to get right into our conversation with him. But before we do that, we have something and someone in the audience.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I got to share it with you. We got Rick Antonio with us on today.
Yeah.
He's my sit-in with me, my sit-in producer. Rick, why don't you give him a shout-out?
I'm just sitting in for the Rob Father. You know it.
But he's a great guy. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to be able to work with him. It's going to be, I think, great fun. The times that we'll have possibly to work together in the future as well. So I want to thank you for making this. We're recording on a different day, and you slid in and are going shotgun for me, pitching for me as the sit-in picture, and I appreciate that time. All right. So we're going to get right into our conversation because there's a lot for us to unpack on today. Those of you who are listening to this via social media, I want you to like, tag, and share this conversation as we continue to move forward. I think it's important for us to have these types of conversations. As I often say, we can change anything that we want to change in the world. As long as we can have a conversation, we can begin to talk about it. All right, so we're going to get right to the heart of what's going to be happening on today. But first, I want to talk about what's hot off the press. Boy. There's so much going on in the world on today. Body cam footage raises questions about the deadly arrest of a black man in Louisiana. Many of us probably haven't heard about this. This is something that's actually been going on for about 2 years. Authorities initially told 49-year-old Ronald Green's family that he had died in a car crash after a high-speed chase, before later releasing a statement saying that he had struggled with troopers and died on the way to the hospital. However, they have some leaked footage that is taking place, and it shows a horse of a different color. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this takes place. This guy, the footage that was shown, and I did get a chance to see a clip of it, he is face down on the concrete, and he's being tased and being kicked in the side by officers. There is not a real sign of resisting arrest. But, this is not showing us what took place before this incident or what after this incident. But it does show us something else that we must be concerned about. And I'll continually bring these issues to the forefront. And even in this, as we have this conversation, Rick, as we continue talking and we bring those law enforcement officers, I think I've reached out to the chief of police for the city of Saginaw. And I think I'll do so with Chief Bassett in the township as well, so that we can begin to talk about these issues and how these types of issues can really structure change that needs to take place in our systems. But we're going to begin, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be very fair as we have that conversation, because I know, I'm not an anti-blue. I'm not a do away with the police or any of those things. My family is. I have a long line of folks who are paramilitary, police officers, and the such and the like. So I will be fair in that conversation. However, I do think that there is a need for addressing some of the issues that seem so pervasive. It seems like every single week we're coming with a new conversation about some things that have happened. Had you heard anything about that, this particular thing, Rick?
This particular case, no.
Okay.
This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, so this has actually hit the airwaves probably just a couple of days ago. So I was digging around trying to find more information, but I'll let you guys know what's going on with that as we continue to unfold the story. This is going to be really interesting. We know the situation down in North Carolina. They're dealing with a FOIA situation. The body cams of police officers for that particular situation of Mr. Brown in North Carolina are not public information, but they're getting bits and pieces of this. My goal is that we continually look at these issues as they arise. There is a great disparity of incidents of this nature that take place in communities of color And I think that we just need to get down to the root of why. And if it's one bad officer, then we need to do better training. But if there's a system that is in play, that we need to look at how we're policing. I think that's going to be the key for me. It's not so much the one bad officer concept, but there is a system that's in play, and we need to evaluate how that system operates. And so that's the key thing that I think I really want to take a look at as we begin to move forward. All right, insurrection. Somebody say insurrection. What insurrection? I am like blown away at what we're seeing here today. It was funny, Rick. I was actually here recording a segment on January 6th. It was a Wednesday.
That day.
That day, as a matter of fact. It was going on while we were here. We were in the studio and we were recording. And when I left here, everyone's like texting me like, "Oh my gosh, you seen what's going on at the Capitol?" Of course, they've been trying to hit me up because I'm on the radio. They wanted me to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I could not believe what I'd seen. We had never seen, not that I can think of, since the Boston Tea Party, a situation where people have really just kind of what I would consider, in my viewing and my understanding, trying to take a strong arm the U.S. government. In this particular situation, was the U.S. Capitol. With all of those individuals that went up there, they were upset about the elections and whatever else was taking place. They were all upset. And so now GOP House Minority Leader McCarthy, who was a strong proponent the day after, he and McConnell were talking very strongly about, this is not who we are as Americans. This was an insurrection. And, number 45 was, the reason. And they were going to hold them accountable. And we have seen a shift in their position. As a matter of fact, they opposed the bipartisan commission to investigate the events of January 6th on Capitol Hill. All right, Rick, I'm going to ask you a question. You've seen the footage a million times.
Oh, yeah.
And you report the news here at WSGW. So I'm really kind of interested in, was there an insurrection, or was this simply people taking, like you would on any other day, taking pictures, walking between the lines and taking pictures in the Capitol?
It certainly wasn't a tour of the Capitol, I'll say that. I mean, I'm trying to keep, because you got the journalistic integrity I gotta keep on there, but at the same time, they weren't exactly going on a tour. You don't get people smearing stuff on the walls and call that a tour.
Yeah, so some of the, I'm blown away by this. I'm going to tell you, at the end of the day, I am an American to my core. So those of you who are out there, understand that I am an American citizen. I happen to be of African descent, hence they give us the term where we use the term African American. I prefer using the term a black man who lives in America. I've never been to Africa. I understand that those are my roots. So I have a great fondness and a love for this nation, for law and order, and just really for people being able to protest and to say what it is that they disagree with. I think that's part of our First Amendment rights. But I think that there are some, there's a line that it has to be drawn in the sand. And so now we see hundreds of these people being prosecuted based upon, they're breaking windows. I don't see how that's peaceful. But anyways, there is, they voted on commission, to have a bipartisan commission. However, the leaders, minority leaders in both the Senate and the House, have said that they are not going with this. They don't think that it's fair. And this is why, Rick, and this is where I need to get some understanding and somebody to breathe some life to this. The reason that they said that they didn't do it, because there needs to be some tweaks. And so every time I hear the tweaks that need to take place to this bill, it's because they want to be able to investigate the issues that took place summer of 2020 with all the social injustice, the marches, and the riots, because there were riots as well, that took place. And they want that to be a part of the commission. Now, this is my thing. If we're looking at what took place on January 6th and we're looking at insurrection as the issue, what does the summer before have anything to do with it? Would be my concern. But hey, I guess if that's where you gotta, put your feather in your hat and stake your claim in order to feel as though you've done something meaningful, by all means, have at it. But hey, we are the red, white, and the blue, the United States of America, and it's time for us to stop making every single thing political. I am, if anything, and I'll tell you guys, I am conservative by nature. I say this all the time. A lot of my views are very conservative. I do have views that some people would probably think are very liberal, so I'd probably be considered a moderate conservative, because I think that we as a nation have to look out for one another, but I think that we also have to stop politicizing everything. There is no such thing as right and wrong. What would you do if your children saw you do these things? What are you teaching your kids? Is there, the truth? Is it all a shade of gray, or is there any absolute when it comes to things like the truth? All right, so we're going to continue moving forward. What were you going to say, Rick?
Oh, no, yeah, it was just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's a great way for us to look at it. How would you address the situation if these were kids? What would you say to your kids, and how would you address that with them? Also, continue moving forward. Michigan is to remove the outdoor gathering restrictions. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The witch is dead. I know I didn't get that right, but it's a tongue twister to me. I can never say that right. So June 1st, I think they're supposed to be removing all of the outdoor restrictions, and indoor restrictions are to be following a month later, July 7th. I don't know about y'all, but I am so sick of wearing a mask. I'm going to continue to wear my mask because I think I just feel safer. Maybe it's become a part of my attire. I've even gotten some that kind of match almost everything when you go black. You can just wear it with everything. It's like a nice pair of shoes. But I am glad to see that so many people are taking precautions. I see a number of restaurants and places that are yet taking precautions, whether or not how you feel about this entire process. And once again, this is another example of something that has gone completely wrong. This is a public health crisis that has now become a political crisis. We are a nation in peril. Coronavirus is going down swiftly here in the United States, which I'm so excited. Thank you for all of those who got vaccinated, who understood that it's important for us to protect one another. Now, this is an issue, Mark. Now that we've been vaccinated, do you have to now get a booster? Is it going to be in 6 months? Is it going to be in a year? So is this going to be something that now becomes that we're taking forever? I'm willing to do it. Honestly, I am, because I've seen just this past weekend, I had a friend of a friend who lost 3 individuals in a 24-hour period. A mother, a father, and a sister in a 24-hour period. I lost my cousin right after January 6th. It was a few days after this insurrection that took place. So, and then I lost probably about 30 religious leaders that I was aware of or close to, that all died during the year of 2020 from COVID. So it's a real serious issue. This is not a political issue. This is a public health crisis. And I wish that we would begin to deal with it as such. So anyways, the dates of freedom are coming. We may get the 4th of July. Who can imagine something that symbolizes this great nation celebrating Independence Day, and we were on lockdown.
Freedom Day.
What'd you say?
Free by Freedom Day.
Man, it's gonna be Freedom Day for real. So July 1st, the indoor gatherings would knock down. Now I want to give a shout out to all of those restaurants and those establishments and those first line responders and workers. They have done an absolutely amazing job this year over the past 14 months, just dealing with the issues of a million people in your drive-through lanes and dealing with folks not wanting to wear a mask and having to deal with the mask whether you liked it or not. Getting up early, staying late, making sure that people were fed, that they had food on the table, that there were groceries in the store. I think that the real heroes of this pandemic are you first responders, to all of the nurses that are out there. And it's not over. I understand this is not a victory lap. I understand that this is not over. But I do want to take the time just to say thank you to all of you that are out there, nurses who caught COVID, continued to work in the hospital and caught COVID again 2 and 3 times. I want to say thank you for all of your hard work, your dedication, and your commitment. We would not have gotten this far had it not been for your hard work and dedication to keeping America great. And so I thank you guys for that. Now we're going to turn the corner, and we're going to get into the conversation. For those of you who are watching on social media, come on, like, tag, and share this conversation. Also, if you'd like to get involved, the number is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. You can get in this conversation. On last week, I laid the foundation talking about the origins of systemic racism. Now, whether or not you agree whether there is systemic racism, and systemic racism basically means that our systems were created in such a way that racism was a part of the systems as they were created, and if never fully eradicated, they yet exist in those systems in how we do a number of things, whether it's from HR to implementation of programs. And so I told you that I would bring individuals in because we have a number of companies, corporations, and school official leaders, educational leaders that are really trying to do some things to make a difference. And so I have my guy to my right. If you're watching, the guy that is dapper, he is the best dressed CEO this side of the Mississippi. I want you guys to receive my guy, CEO of Hemlock Semiconductor, Mark Bassett. Mark, once again, just give a shout out to our audience.
Again, pleasure to be here. And I knew you were going to introduce me that way, I would have wanted something a little more dapper. So.
Well, let's start there. Since we're there, Mark. I had a great opportunity. This was a week ago now. It's been a week today. And as a part of, and I didn't understand when we first connected what you were doing, but Mark is one of those guys who, when he sees something needs to happen, he just gets in there and he makes it happen. And I love the way you operate. We operate much the same in that manner. But you have made a commitment. And one of the things as we were talking, and let me be very clear, Mark is a white man. He is a white man. He is, I think you live in Midland.
Midland, Michigan.
Okay, he lives in Midland, and I'm saying this because I need you all to understand. I come on here and I have some strong conversations about my opinions and my thoughts about things. But what I love about people, and this transcends your race, is I love people who are authentic. And when I say Mark is a white man, he is not one of those guys. I was going to say brothers because he is my brother.
I'm a brother and from another mother.
He's a brother from another mother. He's not one who's trying to portray or be. He is authentically himself. And our conversation, we don't agree on every single thing. And that's the thing that I love about it. But he saw a need to really begin to do some things. And as it relates to minority businesses, and I know we were talking, you said you really want to get involved with entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs and how you can inspire. And so there was a young entrepreneur, relatively young entrepreneur, Monty Holland.
Correct.
Who has an amazing fashion collection.
Did you buy anything, by the way?
Online. Not at the time. I was looking at them like, these are supermodel sizes. I need something with a little bit more girth to it. But Monty Holland, who is a phenomenal designer, and he had the Taeyon collection.
Taeyon collection. Go online and look for it.
All right.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to do something, so he got involved. My mom is online. She said, "I got another son." Yep, Mom, make another plate at the table. But you got involved, and just share a little bit because this is a perfect example of how one of the things in many for many entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color. Capital, investment, directing, positioning, all of those things are things that are often issues. You saw an opportunity to help and you stepped in. Why don't you share with our audience a little bit about that?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, I met a lady named Natalie Hazen, who's got a private equity fund that supports entrepreneurs that have socially minded businesses. And so she introduced me to Monty about a couple of years ago. And I do love fashion, and I really... Monty's a great personality. He has great clothes, but most importantly, he's a great person, and he's trying to make an impact in his community. And so I got involved with Monty and been involved with him for a couple of years. Fast forward to last year, and at Hemlock, what we wanted to try to do is increase our presence in the community, especially the Black and Hispanic community in Saginaw. And so one of the things we really we're thinking about trying to do is host a series of events where we were putting a spotlight on minority-owned businesses. Kind of at the same time, I go to a lot of events in Saginaw, and every time I go to an event, it's kind of the same cast of characters.
It's the usual suspects, as I call them.
Yeah, and they're all good people, but they look a lot like me, and I'll just leave it at that. And so, and there's not a lot of interaction with leaders from the Black and Hispanic communities. So the idea was to host a series of events where we're highlighting minority-owned businesses, and I immediately thought of Monty because he's established, he's a great personality, and we hosted a fashion show at the Temple Theater, and it was a great event. I loved the vibe, I loved the energy, and it was a very, what I really loved about it was a very diverse group, we got Monty gave him a chance to launch his fashion line for this year, and we we're successful in bringing a really diverse set of people together to have a fun night together.
It was a fun night. It was a
yeah.
great time. And so I wanted him to share some of that because this gives you an indication and an understanding of who he is as a person. So, and that philosophy, who you are at the core as an individual, that philosophy is going to carry you wherever you are, no matter what role you play in life. That is going to follow you and be a key piece of how you lead. And so on last week, we were talking about how these systems, we hear about systemic racism. I said, let me take a show and I'm just going to talk about this, and then we'll bring people in that are making some great things happen. Okay, so now just so you guys understand, I didn't chase down Mark to do this interview. Mark has become a friend. We're friends.
We're
right,
friends
Mark?
for sure.
We're friends for sure. But he actually was reaching and trying to make inroads into the Black community, and so another friend connected us, and the rest of it, I guess, is kind of history. But the reason why you were trying to make a connection is, as the CEO of HSC, you thought that it was very important to bring some diversity and some equity and some inclusion into the hiring processes that you guys have. So what was the reason?
Sure.
Share with me
Yeah.
your philosophy on that.
Yeah, so I've been with Hemlock since June 1st of 2016, and the first thing I noticed was it was a very homogeneous workforce.
What do you mean by homogeneous?
Yeah, so I was going to get to that, but it's 85% male, which frankly for the chemical industry is not uncommon. But it was about 97% white. And what struck me about that is we're ultimately in a county that's 30% roughly Black and Hispanic,
Yeah.
and so it's a fundamental question of why and what can we do about that. And so we started a few years ago initially focusing on women because at least there was a bit of a critical mass there, and I think we've made good progress on that. But we really started to ask ourselves about 12 to 18 months ago, what can we do about the racial makeup? And I often get asked, why do you care?
I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I asked you that question the first time.
Yeah.
Why, Mark? Why
Yeah.
does it matter?
Yeah, and so here, I got three real answers to that. I think three reasons. One, I'm a huge believer in talent. I believe in you ultimately win with talent, and when you're hiring 85% of your employees from less than 50% of the population, you're probably not making yourself accessible to all the talent you possibly could. I think the second reason is I believe in diversity of skill, thought, perspective, etc. I had one of my first great bosses was a organic industrial chemist. I was a chemical engineer, and he had this saying of Mark, if you bring a toolbox full of hammers to fix a problem, you probably aren't going to be able to fix it as well as if you have a bunch of different tools. And I've always carried that saying with me. And so I really believe in kind of diversity of everything. And I think, again, when you're hiring 85% of your employees from one, a subsegment of the general population, you're probably not doing that, getting the best diversity of skills, thoughts, etc. And then lastly, ultimately, it's just the right thing to do, and you should never be afraid or apologize for doing the right thing. So.
And I think that's the last one is the one that I really enjoy hearing you talk about all the time. And you say that all the time because it's the right thing to do. When we first met, I said, Mark, why is this important? Why do you want diversity at HSC?
Yeah.
And you look like, we're going to start there?
Yeah.
But it's the truth. And so I've seen you really just kind of parlay these relationships. I see some great things. We're going to talk about some key steps that you guys have taken to really begin to bring transformative change to HSC. And I'm excited about that, to see what's going on. We've had some meetings, and I've seen you guys make some changes in terms of your HR situation that I think are going to be very integral in what you guys are mapping out moving forward. For those of you who are listening out there and you're saying, hey, I need to get my employer or my boss or my company to lean into this conversation, I want you to tag, and share this because this is going to be a great way. Hopefully, I tell Mark all the time that he has the role and the opportunity to be a game changer in the way that CEOs and leaders of corporations do business. I appreciate him being here today, and I hope you guys are tuning in and learning a lot as we continue this conversation on how do we remove racism from our systems and our governance. So we're going to be back after this quick commercial break with more of United Shades of Gray.
United Shades of Gray will continue on WSGW.
How long is the break?
All right, guys, those of you who are following us out there via social media, I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. We're taking a quick break from our recording for the show. The show will actually air, as you guys know, Sunday at 7 p.m. on WSGW, simultaneously 100.5 FM and 790 AM. I want you guys to tune in to that conversation. But while you're here and you're part of this conversation, I want you guys to get involved. You see the number if you want to make a phone call or post your question or comment right there in the comment stream. I also want to for those of you guys who are listening, we have Mark Bassett, who is the CEO of Hemlock Semiconductor. He is really a leader who has a desire to see some change happen, and he is taking some steps forward to see those things take place and to come into fruition. So we're going to continue our conversation as we begin our recording. So you guys just stick tuned. We're getting ready to get right back into the swing of things.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
Hello, this is Kareem. We're back with more conversation of United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America. We're here with my guy, Mark Bassett, CEO of Hemlock Semiconductor. And before the commercial, we were talking about some things that they were doing to make change. I told you that I was going to commit 4 weeks to talking about individuals, leaders in different systems in business, education, and finance, or whatever it was, that were willing and making committed efforts to bring inclusion, equity, and diversity to our systems. So our person or our man of the hour on today is Mark. And Mark, before you were talking about how the reason you were doing this is because it's the right thing to do. So as we talk about it being the right thing to do, and you gave us some stats on how non-diverse your systems have been, or your employee status has been over at Hemlock Semiconductor. You said
85% male.
85%
and
male.
About 97 or so percent white, Caucasian.
Okay, 97% white. So your desire, and he sought out. I mean, and what I like about this, Mark, and I'm going to tell you about this story, and anyone who's listening to this conversation, what I like is that Mark saw something that was not right. And so he proactively began to do some things to see how he could make change happen. That doesn't mean that the will, that everything's going to change overnight, but it means that when he recognized, and I always say this, that when you see something, you have to say something. Mm-hmm. And so he saw something that he did not feel comfortable with, and he began to do some things. And so let's talk about some of the things that you guys have begun to do at HSC. Okay, so this past March, and Rick, you were talking, you kind of threw it out there, said, hey, there were some things going on. I got a release back in March of something that HSC was doing. Tell us what you guys decided, a big leap that you guys have taken towards inclusion, equity, and diversity.
Sure.
Why don't you share what took place?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we began to ask ourselves, well, why is it this way? And I don't know the answer. And so ultimately we have to figure out, is it because people just aren't aware of what we have, the opportunities at HSC? Is it because once they get in, there's an issue inside? So a lot of big questions, and we felt like we needed to add resources to really properly answer those questions and kind of begin to move the needle. And so we hired a young lady, Raquel Ledesma, to run both community affairs and diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we think they're intertwined. I think, we're really excited to have Raquel join the team. What I love about her is, I think, first and foremost, she's from Saginaw,
She's
grown
from the
up
city, yeah.
from the area. And she's just got a ton of positive energy to try to make a difference as well. And so I love those things about her, I think. And so she's jumped right in, and she's beginning to put a plan together. She was a little nervous about me coming in because we haven't fully formalized our plans yet. But
this is the thing.
Yeah.
You said it best. It's the right thing to do. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you that your core values that lead you as an individual, when those core values are in the right place, as a company, your company has no other choice but to follow those core values. And my getting to know you has begun to show that is where you are. You have a sense that you want to see things happen. Now, I'll tell you this, and he threw this out there. I'll say this to just take, so that you guys can better understand. So Mark and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about, systemic racism, and he said, you said something that I would tend to agree. You said, you know what, and I think that this is what all of us, I need everyone who's hearing this conversation to take into understanding. When we talk about systemic racism, we're not talking about every white person is racist. That's not what that means. And Mark said something in our private conversation yesterday, and I hope you don't mind me saying
that's
that.
fine, yeah.
He said, well, Kareem, I don't think that America is a system in which, everyone is racist, that's how we operate. And I would tend to agree. When I look at the people that I communicate with, when I look at the people that I'm partnering with to effectuate change for communities of color, it is a diverse group of people. So I agree with you all. And so when you guys hear those words, don't think that every system is racist and every person in the system is racist. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is that, and I'll go back to something that I said on last week in case you missed it. When the Constitution of America was written, blacks in America were considered 3/5 human, so they were not even included in the Constitution of America as whole citizens. Their citizenship did not come until after. There was an amendment that gave them citizenship rights. There was an amendment that gave them voting rights. And so if the systems were created before racial equality was created, then the understanding and the mentality has to be pervasive in that system. So we're not saying that every white person is racist. That's not what we're saying. Every corporation is racist. No, but we're saying that there has to be steps that are necessary to address those systems. So
Right.
you guys, we're not talking about you bringing on Raquel Ledesma. Raquel Ledesma. She's going to be like, hey, I got 3 shout outs on the radio. No, Raquel, I had an opportunity to meet her. And when we were talking, I told you, Mark, you got to make sure that you get someone who understands the landscape in Saginaw. You had a number of very qualified individuals that you guys were looking for. And I think that you were committed to making sure that this person not only brought with them an understanding of the situation, but they also brought the ability to connect HSC back to the community.
Right.
Okay, so how do you feel moving forward in terms of vision? I want to
Yep.
talk vision and then we'll work our ways. What is your vision that you desire to see?
Yeah,
out
I
of
mean,
HSC?
ultimately, my vision in a certain sense is really pretty simple. I want Hemlock to be viewed as an open door, so everybody can work there, is welcomed and has access to it, and that everyone has an equal chance to develop and grow and fulfill whatever their dreams are in terms of professional growth, that they feel like this is a special place to work, and everybody's welcome and can grow and develop.
Now, I'll tell you guys, as I went out there, I said, hey, Mark, I want to come out. I have lived in Saginaw my entire life. I knew that Hemlock Semiconductor was somewhere out there, but I had never been. I was like, so I would love to come in and just kind of see what you guys are working with, get a tour of the facilities. And I was really blown away at how big you guys were.
Yep.
I think on the tour I learned that you guys were the largest consumer of power.
Biggest consumer of electricity in the state of Michigan
That
by a
is-
long shot.
It was
by a long
phenomenal.
shot.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so I went out there and I took the tour, and I want to say that everyone out there, Mark, they showed the same hospitality that you do as a leader. And so and for those of you who are out there in business and you're a leader and you're leading people, I need you to understand that how you treat your leadership will determine how your leadership treat others. And the standards that you set will also begin to filter out. So it's very important for you to exercise and to say and to show that you are committed to diversity and inclusion. And when you begin to do that, you'll see that begin to infiltrate in the decision making of everyone that is a part of your organization. To everyone out at HSC that had an opportunity to meet, I met kind of like your dream team of folks when I was there. I want to tell you guys are doing an amazing job and excited about what's going on. So that conversation, and now you have someone on there, and just to give an idea, what are some of the things that Raquel is working on? And we talked about her being a little like, I don't know if you should do the interview.
Well,
right?
I think a few things at a high level, and then I think some of the early things we want to do. I think number one of the issues you just alluded to it is the reality is, for a lot of the community in Saginaw County, especially in Saginaw City, that's another world.
Yeah.
And they don't know much about the company. So
We're talking about where HSC was, because I was like, okay, we're out here in the middle of the woods. It's like, when do we, there's no more houses.
Yeah. And so it's number one, it's to develop relationships with leaders in the various parts of the community in Saginaw County, because I personally believe there's a level of trust and that needs to be developed so that we can collaborate and work together to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity at Hemlock. So she's working on developing relationships with leaders in the community. I think one of the other things we're working on is, you talked about systematic racism, and I'll only speak about the systems I know. Absolutely. Do I believe Hemlock's a racist company? No, I don't believe it. But one of the things but I do think that bias exists. I think we all have our own set of biases. I think you do, I do.
Absolutely.
Everybody does. I mean, the simple one I always use is I went to University of Notre Dame, 1979 to 1983.
And we won't hold that against you.
Yeah. And, if you saw a black man walking around campus, my initial assumption was he's a football player, a black basketball player, or a track athlete.
And you probably were right.
There was a pretty high percentage chance I was right, but that's a bias.
Right.
Yeah, and it wasn't 100% true. And so what we want to make sure is that as we look to hire people, there aren't inherent biases that people aren't aware of as they go about hiring people. And so we're going to do, I think, some training, et cetera, internally to make sure that people are aware of what biases may or may not exist as they go through hiring processes.
And it's that's important. I think that's a great place to start in any organization. Racial bias is something that it's kind of hard to quantify, but it's easy to understand. The fact of the matter is that you were raised in a particular area. You were raised doing things in a particular way. A lot of who you are as an individual growing up is poured into you from the environment in which you grew up. And so understanding that we all come into a system with a way of thinking, a way of doing, and some already preconceived understandings of who people are and how they operate is really what understanding biases means. And then there are certain things called schemas that we have that prevent us from really seeing a fuller picture of how things operate. So you're dealing with issues internally first. I think that charity always starts at home. You got to get your dirty laundry right at home first, as my grandmother say. Don't air your dirty laundry, but you deal with that at home. You now have this amazing person that's coming on. She is now doing something. One of the things that I think every company should have, and we saw this happening a lot, especially August, July, August, September of 2020, and that is coming up with statements of diversity. Like, this is who we are as a company, and that's what your diversity statement is saying. And then also allowing, and this is something that I think is so we can bring in, Mark, and I've said this to you before, we can bring in Hispanics and people, brown people and black people and red people or whatever, all into a room that doesn't create diversity. That's just a lot of races in a room. But diversity is often the touchdown. And as you plan, and my encouragement, if I have any influence with you whatsoever, which I think I have a little bit, one of the things that I will always say is diversity is the end zone. It is the touchdown. And so there are two other words that are very important: equity and inclusion. And for anyone who's listening, equity and inclusion, equity plus inclusion equals diversity. That is your math lesson for today.
It's interesting because we were actually having a philosophical discussion about that yesterday with Brooke Beebe, who's Raquel's boss.
Okay.
And I was actually asking the fundamental question: is there a hierarchy? And if you have equity, is that ultimately what you're trying to achieve? And as a result, do you have inclusion and diversity if you just shoot for equity?
So you can go back and you tell Brooke, who I love. Brooke is I enjoy. She was all gussied up at the fashion fair. I know who she was.
Yeah.
But equity plus inclusion equal diversity. Now, let's explain what those things are for someone who's out there. And I think this is.
By the way, I actually was making the argument that all you need to shoot for is equity, and they actually convinced me that it's both. You
need both, and so this is good.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is what I like, Mark. You are willing to, and I for those who listen, if you lead people, you've got to be willing to listen. Your success is so tied up and is so detrimental to your ability to listen to those that are around you, to those that you trust. And to those that you have brought into a system to do this work. So equity, when we talk about equity, that means that there is a room with a table, and equity means that I'm going to be, first of all, let me start with inclusion. Inclusion means that I get invited to the room, right? For so long, CEOs have led from the top down approach, and they make the rules and everyone pushes it out. But as we have seen, that the more people in the room, the greater the opportunities and ideas and opportunities for collaboration. So inclusion means I get a ticket to the room. I get to come in the room. Now, a lot of times we've seen corporations, create inclusive environments where they say gays are welcome here, blacks are welcome here, Asians are welcome here. They bring them all into the room and they sit them at the table, but there's no mic, or there's a mic, but the volume on the mic is turned down. So equity without inclusion means I get invited to the dance, but no one asks me to dance. So inclusion means that but equity. So inclusion means that I get invited to the dance. Equity then means that my mic works, that I get invited to dance. I'm at the dance. I get asked to dance. Now I'm a part of the process. And when we begin to bring people into the room, and then we allow them a voice, and to their voice have the equal weight of those around the table, we then create something called diversity. Because what happens if you bring, blacks out to HSE and it doesn't have a culture that isn't set up to embrace them? And I know, I've seen your videos. You guys have a fun time out at HSE. But
cornhole tournaments, euchre tournaments.
I mean, I was sitting there like, this is kind of cool. You kind of get a little bit of Silicon Valley feel. Come work it out in the middle of Hemlock. But when they come in, they're invited to dance. They're a part of it. Their ideas are shared and understood, and they're listened to. That's what brings diversity. Diversity is where a person can come in, and it's what you have designed, what you have said in terms of your design for this company, that everyone is included and feels comfortable and feels welcome. So I'm excited about that. So let's talk about what your plans are and some of the things you guys have going on as it relates to. One of the things that I shared with you, Mark, was if you really want to make a change, the investment starts with getting into the community. Community investment has to happen, and it has to happen often. And so you guys are doing some cool things with SPSD and everything that's going on. Why don't you share a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think you actually introduced me to Dr. Roberts. I guess it's been about a year. And that kind of kicked it off, so thank you for that. And unfortunately, the pandemic has slowed a little bit of it down, but hopefully we'll be able to really kick it off, this coming year. And I think, again, we want to start young and develop a relationship with the local schools as well as students who have a desire to potentially stay in the region, whether they're hourly employees or salaried employees. And so we've worked on ideas around having internships or co-ops. Historically, our internships and co-ops have been very administrative in nature, but having them be much more kind of professional in nature. So whether it's a kid who's strong in math or computers, or potentially has an interest in the trades, trying to develop internships or co-ops to allow those students to interact with us out at Hemlock and get a feel for what those kind of careers might look like and what working for our company might look like. We have, as you know, it's been a long-standing summer scholarship to Michigan Tech for local high school students. We've struggled.
We're laughing. We're laughing about that. Tell them why we're laughing, Mark.
We're laughing about it because, frankly, we've really struggled to get students from Saginaw Public Schools to apply for what is a free trip to Michigan Tech in the summer to learn about what life as an engineer is like.
Yeah.
And as you've pointed out, and one of your friends have pointed out, it's kind of like how many black kids want to go to Houghton.
As appealing as that may be.
Yeah. Now, what my counter to that, frankly, is, but if you want to be an engineer, the reality is most of the companies you're going to work for are predominantly going to be white, and so that's the world you're going to be entering.
And it's not, but that's what I was saying. It's not so much that fact, and I agree with you, and I've been in those systems. But it's the fact that, do I have to be at a predominantly white place 9 hours away from the next brown face? I mean, that's the thing. So, but I think, we've talked about, just looking at other ways to bring in those similar opportunities. Yep. And I thank you for being open to that. And there's young people that may hear this, and I'm going to make sure that I tag this on my page, because I know there's a lot of young black and brown engineers that are looking for jobs and looking to do great things, and not necessarily want to run all the way from home and desire to come back to the city. And so HSC provides a great. What are some of the key career paths that you guys are having?
Again, so if you look at our employee base, I'd say we are 1/3 salaried, and most of those people are engineers. Primarily chemical, mechanical, and a little bit of electrical. And so that's kind of the one main area. Then we have 2/3 of our employees are hourly workers, and they are either what you call chemical operators, so they're operating the chemical plant, or they're in our maintenance operations, so they're out fixing things. And that's been my kind of frustration a little bit, Kareem, is that we have, in my mind, great jobs at Hemlock. And it starts out at, I don't know, $40,000 a year. You quickly get to $60,000 a year, full benefits.
In what position with it?
Yeah, like a chemical operator.
Okay, so these are some of the things when you were talking about, and it's a barrier. It's a barrier, and the barrier isn't necessarily that they won't let you in, but the barrier is an awareness barrier. So one of the things that you have been really doing is saying, listen, Kareem, if someone comes out of high school and they're not looking to go into college full time.
Yep.
They need to understand that we have access points that they'll come in and maybe start off at 40, but quickly get to 60,000. And you were talking about the packages.
You got full medical, you got 401k programs. And so I look at it and go like, wow, I would think we'd be people knocking down our door, and we do, but it's a very homogeneous crew knocking on our door. And so to me, the fundamental question is, well, why? And is it a lack of awareness? There's a reputation issue? And so that's kind of the journey we're on, is kind of trying to tackle both, make sure there's an awareness out there, but also make sure inside that once we get people inside that, it's a welcoming environment where they can flourish and grow. And this is where, again, back to the community affairs point of it, is where we need to develop better relationships with leaders in those communities so that we can partner to make sure that the right people are also knocking on our door and will succeed once they get inside as well, because it's not a one-way street. So
okay, so I think that's amazing. And as we look at what you guys have been putting in place, we've been talking. We've been doing a lot of conversation about like what's going to happen, how these things look, and I think it's really good, really important. I want to say to those who are listening, the reason why this conversation between Mark and I is so important is because when we begin to understand as leaders of corporations or entities or boards that there is a need for change to take place, the easiest thing for us to do is to reach out to the community and say, listen, this is what we're looking to do. How can we best service your community? And show us, is there, who are the people that are able to make some things happen? And Mark, you get a star for doing that the right way. And I want everyone to know, and I look at this and I say to you all the time, Mark, not many companies are doing this. Not many companies are coming in, and I want to say to the hood, but into the inner city, and saying, listen, we understand that we have some deficiencies here as a company as it relates to our employment, in terms of our culture, and we want to make change. How can we make change? And then go to those communities and listen. And so if you're listening, if you're out there and you are the head of a corporation, president, CEO, HR director, whatever, I want you to kind of examine that same pattern and see how you might be able to implement. Not that Mark is the great hope over here. He's going to show us the way, but the fact that he has a desire to see some great things happen. So Mark, what is next? What are we looking for in a couple of short minutes? What are you looking
Sure.
forward to happening next?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, what I'd like to do is number one, see us get more applicants from the Black and Hispanic community locally, and then begin to make sure that as we fill jobs, that there's not an unconscious bias that's preventing them from walking in the doors. Just real simply is, we'll be hiring a number of people, 20, 30 people over the next handful of months. I'd love to make sure that we have a diverse set of applicants and a diverse set of people. The people we're hiring is a diverse set of people. And I would love to partner with, again, local leaders in the community to make sure everyone's getting a fair chance.
And so we will make sure that we get where they hire and how they hire.
Yep.
We'll put it on the website. We'll make sure that we get that information up. Mark, this has been an amazing opportunity. I'm so glad we've been talking about doing it. I'm glad we finally taken the time to sit down and have this conversation.
A lot of fun.
A lot of fun, all
Yep.
right? So don't be afraid when Kareem calls. I have hard conversations, but at the end of the day, if we're willing to sit down and have a conversation, there is nothing on this planet that we cannot change. Thank you for tuning in to another conversation of United Shades of Gray. Conversations and race in America. I want you guys to stay tuned. Tune in on Sunday at 7 p.m. and the future weeks as we continue talking about removing racism from the systems that govern our nation. Thank you for tuning in. Take care of yourselves and each other. Grace and peace. You guys for tuning in today. If you guys have any questions, put them in the stream. Send me a message, direct message me here at United Shades of Gray or on my personal Kareem Bowen. I want to thank you guys for this conversation and tuning in. Like, tag, and share this conversation with those who are out there. And as usual, on next week, tune in as we talk once again with other systems of within our community that are really doing some great things to really make sure that equity, inclusion, and diversity are all a part of what they do. So I want to thank you guys. Thank you for tuning in this week, and thank you for your continued listenership. Later.